traveling around the world. You spent half of your time in Singapore, now you're present in Cyprus, and you talk to different international clients and partners all over the world. So it's really interesting. How do you see the situation from other countries, and what is the international opinion on this situation here?
All right, Dina, it's quite interesting, right? Because I used to spend about half of my time between Cyprus and Singapore. Now, these days, I spend more time in Singapore and only coming to Cyprus during my daughter's school holidays, right, in Singapore. Yeah, unfortunately, they're small, right, and basically I'm spending not more than 2 months a year in Cyprus, which is basically very pity for us, right? We are citizens of EU member state, right, and therefore it's quite important for us to understand properly, right? I mean, what's going to be, what impact is going to be on EU as a whole. And recently, right, I've spoken to some people in Cyprus about their feelings, right, what they think about, this voting, right, so-called the Brexit and so on, right? And most of Cypriots, right, I mean, our friends and our colleagues and basically our partners, right, they are looking at this very negatively, right? And they're saying, right, UK been getting a lot of benefits, right, being an EU member, and basically they feel, right, if EU would leave, it will have a very negative impact, right? I mean, let's start first of all, right? I mean, with the financial sector in Cyprus. As we know, right, Cyprus, Cyprus company has been quite popular for a long time among British businessmen. We also know, right, that people have been opening bank accounts, is probably to less extent now after 2013 financial crisis when one of Cyprus bank went down. Nevertheless, because in this business, right, and we can clearly see that inquiries still coming, right, and people still interested in Cyprus companies. What EU is doing at this moment, right? EU is pushing for harmonization, especially if this is coming from harmonization of taxation, especially if this is coming from Germany and France. So they basically want to make all taxes more or less similar to each other, and in order to avoid a kind of shopping for better tax jurisdiction and so on. For Cyprus, it's probably going to be quite a strong negative impact, right? Because EU being a quite big vocal voice against that harmonization, and we know that that the UK government was fighting in order not to introduce financial tax, and we all know that London financial centre is second in the world, second biggest in the world at this moment, and it's big because it's been lightly and less regulated than other European financial centers, right? And people prefer to come to London to make financial deals, right? I mean, so for example, like issue bonds or to buy bonds, a place, make initial public offering of their shares and so on. If Germany and say like France position will dominate, and we would say, right, UK is out of the EU, basically this is going to happen. This is going to happen, and Cyprus will stay only with two minor, industries, right? Is tourism and property. If you're talking about tourism, most probably, right? I mean, Cyprus is going to be okay, right? Because Cyprus is staying outside of Schengen zone and basically can regulate like the UK, right? I mean, whom to allow in and allow and not to allow. So basically, it's going to be, I think, a visa free traveling between UK nationals and into Cyprus in order to support holidays. Another thing is property, Cyprus property. Cyprus property is quite popular among British nationals, and basically I'm living in a small village outside of, on outskirts of Limassol, right? And we have some British nationals living here for quite a long time. They own property, right, and they own pieces of land, right? I mean, according to Cyprus regulation, foreigners can own only small piece of land, right? I mean, that, basically, I don't know how this is going to be resolved. These Brits, right, who've been living in Cyprus for maybe last time, maybe 20, 25 years, right? And because if, say, the UK is going to be not a part of the EU anymore, right? I mean, they will, be treated separately, right? And those restrictions are going to apply. Also, another thing is, right, my son is currently studying in Scotland, right, and what is good for us, right, basically Brussels covering most of his education. If, say, for example, UK is going to be out of the EU, right? I mean, this is going to change, right? And for us, basically, it might have a personal negative impact, right? I mean, many Cypriots are used to go to study in the UK, right? Because basically Cyprus being a part of British, say, like empire, right, in the past, right? And still continue. Cyprus, the UK is very popular destination for study. Also, quite interesting. Somebody mentioned, right, if the UK, right, is out of EU, right? I mean, English is being an official EU language, right, because of the UK, right? I mean, but if the UK is out, right? I mean, nobody been thinking about, I mean, how people are going to communicate, right? I mean, if the EU government, or say, council or whatever, parliament will decide to downgrade the language, right? I mean, how people will speak, right? I mean, because, it's quite complex, right? If you look in big countries like, say, like Russia or the United States or China, in China there are about maybe 250 different nations, right? I mean, but they all speak Mandarin, right? Basically, it's mandatory, right? I mean, in the EU is a much more complex situation because it's 28 countries in the EU, right? And basically, every country wants to have its own language to be heard, right? And basically, therefore, right, you employ a lot of people from, like interpreters and translators, right? I mean, which is basically making it's inefficient. If we switch back to, say, Singapore and say, what is my view from been working in Singapore, right? I mean, basically, I checked yesterday news websites, right? I mean, major in news websites in Singapore, and they mostly been, reprinting articles from Bloomberg and Reuters about it, right? So the overall impact, right, is basically on Singapore economy is not going to be great, right? I mean, Cyprus will have a much bigger impact. Singapore is independent, so it's basically it still will trade with the key, right? I mean, it used to be the only worry. What is basically you can read on Bloomberg and Reuters that all financial institutions, big banks, and so on, right? I mean, they're a bit worried of a kind of unknown because there's nobody ever left EU, right? Even we had a situation with, say, Greece, right, and being very vocal voices, right, to let, say, Greece to at least leave euro area. This didn't happen, right? I mean, and basically EU is still supporting Greece, right? And but it's also right if you look at the whole situation, right? I mean, of these debates, right? I think it's not. I mean, say like against something like EU in particular, right? It's more like a protest voting because if you have a look at the situation over the Atlantic, right, you can see that, say for example, in the United States, you have also a situation, and there are two candidates, right, and one of them is also playing very heavily on immigration fears. So saying, look, immigrants will come, right, they'll take your jobs, right, there's going to be more crime and so on, right, and we need to stop it. And even proposing, right, to build a wall, right, I mean, to separate the United States from Mexico. It's, like those trends is not only, say, a tension, it's not only between the UK, right, and the EU, right? It's also right. We can see it clearly in different parts of the world, and it looks like those processes been mostly generated by slowing down of global economy. Because in the past, when everything was good, people have been getting enough money. They shouldn't be worried, right, about anything else. So I've spoken about, say, 5 years ago to one real estate agents here in Cyprus, right? And he told me that in the past, right, there have been so many claims, right? They have never worried about unlicensed real estate agents, because a person said to me, look, I mean, just, you know what, I know that there have been queues, I mean, for property, right, and I shouldn't be worried, right, because it's not me who's supposed to look for claims. It's basically claims been coming and looking for us. When situation changed, right, he started that we licensed agents, real estate agents started to report on unlicenses in order to, you know, like to protect our market. And this is what is in reality is happening, right? It's basically protest votes against EU, how the EU is being run in general, because basically what is, you know, like, I mean, it's very cumbersome, right? It's very, you know, like a slow moving, right? I mean, comparing to, you know, like say individual countries like, say, the UK. UK is more dynamic, right? I mean, in the EU, we have a variety of countries, right? Some countries have been quite well developed, right? Like Germany, and some countries, you know, like Greece, right? I mean, staying somewhere in arrears, right? And basically, it will take ages, right, in order to, you know, like to bring this to the situation when, you know, like Greece back on its feet, right, and, you know, like and progress countries again. And we know from the history of, say, like a Roman Empire or a history of Soviet Union, right, when big empires being disintegrated, or say unions, whatever you call them, right, being disintegrated because individual states, right, or individual rulers decided that it's easier, right, to recover, right, to get on the feet, on its own feet, right, individually, than trying to say, like, I mean, just fight as a common, you know, like as a one union, which is becoming ineffective, right? Because, you know, like management of that, it's very complex. 28 different nations, right? And you have to agree on a major decision. Decision making is also taking time. If you compare, say, like the United States or Russia, right? I mean, just, you know, like they have a federal government, or say like a Russian government. They can take a very quick decision and implement it quickly. While EU, right, sometimes it's taking years, right, in order to decide to accommodate, you know, like opinion of every single nation, right? But sometimes, right, when they reach a decision, right, I mean, situation completely change, and they have to work it again, and this is like a vicious circle and never-ending process. Back to you, yeah.
Right.